Pastor Josh here. We're reading Genesis chapter 24, verses 1 through 11. Abraham is going to send his servant to go get a bride for his son Isaac. The promised son needs a bride because God has made a promise that he would bless the entire world through the offspring of Abraham. Also said that he would give the offspring of Abraham, give him the land. And we have a previous encounter between God and Abraham where the promise was that in 400 years later his descendants would come back to the land and would have the land that he promised to Abraham. Well, there's a problem. Isaac is not married at this point, and if Isaac doesn't get married, that means he's not going to have a child, and if he doesn't have a child, that means there will be no descendants or offspring to take the land. And so now we see Abraham acting in faith, acting with a hopeful expectation that God is going to move. So let us take a look at it. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and I like the way the King James says it. He was well stricken in years. Abraham has come to the end of his life. He is getting very tired. He is not able to do half of what he used to be able to do. It's getting harder and harder, and he knows that his days are coming to a close. And his son is not yet married. His son isn't married, and therefore he also doesn't have a son. And so Abraham is going to act in response to the promises that God has given him. So Abraham is old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And isn't that a sweet promise? We can always, as Christians, we can always believe and embrace the very fact that God will bless us in all things. Does he bless us in the exact same way or the exact way that we would prefer? No. Does he always bless us with material blessings? No. Does he always bless us with a life free of obstacles and free of problems? No. But he does bless us in all things. And I think every Christian, everyone that is walking with the Lord, when they are thinking correctly, when they are thinking rightly, and they look back over their life, they're able to say, God has blessed me. He's been with me. His presence has been very sweet. His help has been always present. And yes, it's been tough. And yes, there's been plenty times that it would appear that I wouldn't want to be going through this right now. But I think all of us can say God has blessed us in all things. Even in the dark, difficult moments, God's presence is with us, and he blesses us, and he blessed Abraham in all things. And I can't help but think that this blessing that Abraham has received, the blessing of his presence, isn't what actually compels him to have this hopeful expectation that God will give Isaac a son. And so Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. Now, you may think that's a little weird, a little odd, but this is a way that they would make they would make promises to each other. This is a way that they would swear to each other. And so there is the servant putting his hand, or Abraham asked him anyway, to put his hand under my thigh. I guess as little kids you'd pinky promise, right? So it's essentially something like that. That I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughter of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. No, not from the Canaanites. They are not the promised children. They are not to be married to Isaac. But instead, I want you to go to my country, to my kindred, and take a wife from my son Isaac. The servant said to him, oh, but perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Maybe they want to stay there. What if she doesn't want to come? And Abraham said to it, see to it that you do not take my son back there. No, he's not supposed to marry anybody from here, from the people of Canaan, and he's not to go back to the place that I came from, because God called me from there and gave me this land and promised my offspring this land. So no, you don't need to take him back to the land of Ur. Then verse 7, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful words that Abraham has, this hopeful expectation. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring I will give this land. No, God told me He's going to give my offspring this land. He will send His angel before you. And isn't that a good example for us to follow? Abraham believed that God would go before his servant and provide a bride for Isaac. And you shall take a wife from my son there. He's expecting God to do it. But then he kind of hedges his bets a little bit. Abraham isn't stupid. He realizes, okay, perhaps God's going to work in a way that I don't understand. But he says, if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. Don't take them back there, and don't let him marry one of the women here. You can tell how old Abraham is and how well stricken in years he is, how well advanced in years he is, because he is worried that he won't be around to see Isaac married. And if he's not around, he's trusting this servant of his to make sure that Isaac walks in the way that he needs to be walking. So verse 9, the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this master. And boy, did he prosper his journey. So then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he rose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when women would go out to draw water. And that will actually be rather important. The fact that he has 10 camels, the fact that he's been on a very long journey, and that they are sitting by the well for the time for the women to come. So we'll talk about what the servant does in our next reading. I do want to, though, make a note. This chapter is 67 verses long. Up to this point, it is the longest vignette. It is the longest story of the book of Genesis. And this is all about getting a bride for Isaac. That's what the whole story is. And actually, there's some repetition of words. It's the longest story up to this point. In that kind of should alert us that this is important. God is bringing a bride to the promised son, and I can't help but think that this is a type. This is pointing to how God brings the bride of Christ, to Jesus. We saw 2 chapters ago. Isaac was a type of Christ being offered up as a sacrifice. And so here we see the bride being searched for, being found, and being brought to Isaac in just a wonderful way. The Lord just truly prospers the servant's work as he goes about this. And so I look forward to breaking this down with you and looking at each and everything that the servant does. I pray that has been a blessing to you, and I'll see you in the next video.